So you lied on your resume and said you knew After Effects. But let's be honest, you've been dragging and dropping Premiere Pro templates and you barely understand how keyframes work. I get it, we've all been there. In this short 10 minutes, I'm going to show you all the tools you need to get yourself ready for the next client job. Now let's jump to After Effects.
First and foremost, on the left hand side over here is your project panel. This is where you put all of your graphics like footages and all of your assets. Let's do that, shall we? Now that I've imported them inside over here, it's really important to keep things professional and organized, so that whoever is taking over your project knows what they're doing. So I just created a new folder over here. I'm going to name this 00_render so people know that this is the main composition that they use to render out the exports. I'm going to do that again and name this pre-comp, and lastly I'm going to do the last one and call it assets. Now it looks organized. Go to the top left hand corner, click composition and hit new composition. If you want to do that on a shortcut, hit Command N on the keyboard, just like this. So for this, if you're doing in Asia, we use 25 frames per second. If you're in America, they use 29 frames per second or 30 frames per second. Sometimes they use 24. But let's just stick to 25 frames per second in full HD, shall we? Gonna name this tutorial. As you can see over here, our composition is completely empty and there is nothing on the timeline. So let's drag and drop the footage. Now that I've dragged and dropped the footage over here, let me just zoom in for a second. Let's say we only want this animation to be 5 seconds. By scrubbing into the timeline over here, go to the place where it says 5 seconds and hit your keyboard N, which signals the end of the timeline. If you want to say the intro to start about 1 second over here, hit D on the keyboard, or you can just drag this over here. Now, let's say you want to play this back, hit spacebar on the keyboard. Depending on your computer, it might take a while for your computer to actually cache the entire After Effects sequence and play it back in real time. If you ever use Photoshop, then you should understand that the hierarchy of the layers depends on what you put on top or below it. So say for example, we drag and drop the logo on top over here and I hit S on the keyboard and scale it all the way down to about this size. The layer of the logo is on top. Now say if I want it to be behind the footage, I just bring it down over here and it's behind the footage. Now let's bring it on top back, shall we? If you hover over here and you click this arrow button over here, closes up this again and it opens up. So as you can see, you have multiple transform properties over here. You have the anchor point, position, scale, rotation, and opacity. The thing about After Effects is that 90% of the time, you are mostly spending your time animating the keyframe of the properties over here. Now, let's do some animation. If you go to the front of your timeline and you hit position and you hit the keyframe button over here, drag the logo all the way down and holding shift to toggle snapping along the grid. Go to 1 second, do the same thing, drag this all the way up. If I hold shift on the keyboard, it snaps along the grid. If I let go, it moves accordingly. So let's say we just want it to snap along the grid and go back to the middle over here. Now what After Effects just did right there is that it automatically creates a piece of keyframe over here. So say for example, I go to the 2 seconds and I move this to the right, it automatically creates another piece of keyframe. Let me just undo that. After Effects works like that. Whenever you move an object and you already toggle the keyframe button, it automatically moves stuff for you. So keyframe are like markers over here. What it means is that at 1 second, I want you to move the keyframe over here. At 0, I want you to move it over here. So say for example, you want to move this faster, you can always just drag this closer. It's moving faster. If you want to make it slower, you can just drag this out. As you can see, it's moving slower. Let's move it back to about 1 second and pull that back. If you can see, the movement over here is very robotic, and the reason for that is because if you look closely at the keyframe, it's set to linear, which is looking like this diamond icon. So let's move this and change this, shall we? Right click, hit Keyframe Assistant and Easy Ease, or the shortcut F9, and let's play that back. It's much better. And if you ask yourself why you need easy ease, think of it this way. In physics, anything that moves doesn't move at 100 kilometers per second immediately. It needs to accelerate and decelerate accordingly. A car doesn't just move 100 kilometers immediately. It needs to move from 0 to 50 to eventually 100. And the same laws of physics apply over here. Now, let's do some animation and add some opacity, shall we? So say for example, you want this to just kind of like be disappeared. So what I can do is I can hit keyframe over here on the opacity and go this down all the way to 0% and say it's coming in about 14 frames. Let's bring this back up to 100 and let's do the same thing and add ease. Let's just play that back. Better. Let's tweak this animation, shall we? First, select the keyframes and go to the graph editor over here. right click and make sure you're on speed graph. Now, how I like to think of animation in keyframe terms is like this. Say for example, you're going up the roller coaster and the curve is just like a roller coaster. So think of it as like your movement is moving upwards and going downwards really smooth and in equal motion. So say for example, I move it like this. Think of it as like it's going up really fast and going down really fast, and then eventually it slows down and halts to a stop. So if I play that back, moves just like that. Now for the keyboard shortcuts, let's switch this back to keyframe panel, and if I hit this and I hit U on the keyboard, it hides everything else and only shows you the keyframe. So if I hit U again, it hides everything on the layer. So say for example, I want to see the scale. I hit S on the keyboard and it opens up the scale. If I want to see position, hit P. If I want to see opacity like what we just did, hit T on the keyboard. So let's hit U again on the keyboard to reveal back keyframe that we just did. So I'm going to add a new text over here. I'm going to click on top and I'm going to type lost in. Then I'm going to add Taiwan. So if I click back the selection tool, this time around I'm going to move this here, and Taiwan, I'm going to move this here. Cool. Now that we have this, let's drag the animation out to about 1 second, and Taiwan will add 3 frames after that. Play that out. Lost in Taiwan. Perfect. And let's just make this at a different font on the properties layer. So let's say I would like to change this to condense and make this a little bit bigger. I like to move this back down. So maybe let's just do it like that. Yeah, that looks cool. And change the color to yellow. And if we play that back, lost in Taiwan. Perfect. We'll pre-compose this and select the objects by clicking Command Shift and C. It toggles up pre-compose. And I'm going to name this logo and text. So now our background is different from our logo and text. Now, if you notice on the left hand side over here, by pre-composing your logo and your text, it automatically creates a pre-composed object over here, which is the logo and text over here. What I like to do is kind of just drag it to pre-com to kind of just keep things a little bit organized. And if we double click on this, it actually goes into the pre-comp itself. If we go back to the tutorial, this is where we're gonna go. Yeah, so how pre-compose actually works is that it groups every single object that you just selected and make it into a pre-comp. And inside that pre-comp is where your nested objects are. So say for example, I were to change this text over here and say, we love like this Taiwan, and we go back to the tutorial, it automatically updates the pre-comp that we just made just now and says we love Taiwan. Now let's make a new composition. If we go to on the top, click new composition, I'm going to name this tutorial 2, and I'm going to drag footage and name footage that we have. I'm just gonna hit S and scale this down. I'm gonna say this is about another 5 seconds and hit N again. So now let's drag our pre-comp that we just created just now, the logo and text, and if we play that back, hit spacebar on the keyboard. Perfect. With this pre-comp, you can actually create multiple pieces of animation just by using one source pre-comp. Think of it as like if you have one single piece of text animation, you can duplicate this and then use it across all the different scenes that you want. Now, this wouldn't be After Effects if we don't add some effects to it. To do that, let's just say we click on the footage over here, click on the Effects and Presets panel, gonna add a color correction. Let me just Hue and Saturation. I can either double click it or drag and drop, but since I just double click it, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna reduce the saturation down to black and white, and if we play that back, we love Taiwan. Perfect. Now let's export this video. So if we go back to our render comp just now and go to tutorial 1, and let's say I want to export this pre-comp, I go to composition and hit add to render queue, and I usually like stick it to best settings. For the output, this is where things get really important. So for video editors out there who wants to export like high quality animation, I usually just tend to stick to QuickTime and hit Apple ProRes, or 42HQ. Depending on the quality of the project, usually I stick to 4:4, but usually 422HQ it's good enough. And let's say I click OK and I click output and I hit the basic location that I want and I hit render. Perfect. Now if we go back to our file and we go back to the View Export, we have our final export over here. So let's say you want to export this for iPhone or for YouTube. So let's just do the same thing for this tutorial, but instead of using render queue, let's say we add to Adobe Encoder queue. What this does is it loads up Adobe Media Encoder and helps you export a bunch of stuff with presets out there for you to export. So for me right now, for website and for web upload, I usually tend to stick to H.264 and adaptive high bitrate match source. So if you click this location that you want to export and say I name this YouTube, it exports as a .mp4, hit the play button, and it exports the final resolution ready for web. Click this. As you can see, it's ready for web. It's about 10 megabytes. Now I know After Effects can seem pretty daunting out there, but with a little bit of practice, you get really good at it. And with these basics, you have the basics fundamental that you really need right now to get yourself ready and understand After Effects for the next client project. I hope you guys liked this tutorial. Please like and subscribe. Leave me down in the comments below if you want to see more of this type of content. And until then, keep making awesome shit.